Hello, everyone, and welcome to Too Much Mary channel, where I bring to you interesting, inspiring people so that you and I can learn from them and just incorporate their wisdom into our lives. So today on the other side, I have Abby. Abigail is a friend of mine. We actually met online, and what she does inspires me in a way where she helps women like her to step out, to transition from their corporate life-sucking jobs into living a more meaningful, more purposeful life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Abby.
Mary, it's an absolute honour to be here. I love what you do as well, so I'm really looking forward to this chat.
Thank you. So I would just start with I think everything that we're going to talk about needs a bit of like a backstory. So I would love if you would just dive into how did you come to even find your purpose? Like, where were you at that time to just be able to step out of your corporate life and just find your purpose? How did that whole story unveil?
Okay, I'll try and keep it as concise as I can. So I realised very early on in my career when I worked in corporate that it just wasn't for me, but I just felt that it's something that I had to do. I travelled all around the world when I was in my 20s. I'd had loads of fun. I'd had an amazing life, and now I was like, right, I need to come back and buy the house and get the career and be like sensible, and live a normal life. But so I stayed in corporate very, very unhappily for about 14 years. And I knew that I wanted to do something else, but there was something stopping me from leaving. And I think, there was a lot of fear around, well, what would I do? And, I've got this standard of lifestyle. I've got a mortgage. I like to go on nice holidays. I've got bills to pay. Like, how on earth would I make that money if I was to leave? And also, I've worked really hard to get where I am. I climbed the corporate ladder and I got to a senior manager. I was an executive within the business. And I was like, well, why would I throw all of that away just on a whim? I really felt that it was just a little phase that I was going through. And it just stayed and stayed and stayed until I actually had a really, really bad heart condition. And it just got to a point where my body said, hang on a minute, this is enough. And to cut a very long story short, if you want to know the whole story, you can go onto my website, abigailrebecca.com, and just click the About Me section. You'll be able to see it there. But to cut a very long story short, I left. I left because I knew that I just could not stay in that job anymore. I couldn't live my life being so unhappy. And I had no idea what I was going to do, but I felt that I wanted to be really, really creative. So I retrained to be a personal stylist at the London College of Fashion. I did that for a little bit. It wasn't really bringing me joy. So then I discovered the online world. Then I discovered the personal development world. So I started working with a coach, and I brought my business online. And then throughout that period, I transitioned. So I transitioned from a personal stylist, like image consultant online, to helping female entrepreneurs speak on stage and speak to camera. And then eventually what I do now, which is to help women leave their soul-sucking executive jobs so that they can live a really free, happy, and a financially abundant lifestyle. And the reason that I wanted to point out that transition is that all through those stages, I was still trying to figure out what my purpose was. And then about a year ago, I realized that my purpose was actually to find joy. That is my purpose. I have so many women that come to me and they're like, what's my purpose? I don't know what my purpose is. My purpose was to find joy. And that's what I've been seeking through the way that I live my life, through the flexibility that I get for running my own business, for the travel that I have, from working with women all around the world. So really my purpose is to find joy and to live a joyful life, and then to help others find their joyful life as well.
You have a very amazing story. I think your whole story is just like a typical from how to transition from fun to adulting, just like I see how I also thought like, okay, so adulting and job and everything is okay. I should do it, but it doesn't have to be connected with joy and fun. It's just this other thing, you know? And this is like where all the anxiety and unfulfillment comes from, because we separate our jobs from our personal life in a way where we just don't enjoy it, you know?
I used to even dress differently
Yeah.
when I was in corporate.
Yeah.
You know, I'd go to corporate and I'd be corporate Abby, and then I'd come home and I'd be like me, you know, as much me as I could be. But, you know, so I'd go to corporate all suited and booted, and then I'd come back and I put my cut off jeans and we'd go off in the camper van, you know, so it was two very, very separate lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also like this is really something that stuck out of this like story, is how you are aiming for an emotion, like how you are aiming for an emotional state rather than, oh, this title, oh, this thing, oh, but I'll be successful, I'll be fulfilled, and my purpose is when I'll have this car and this house and when I'll have this amount of money, when actually there's an emotion to aim for. Like you said, it's a joy to aim for. And whatever doesn't click with that emotion is not your purpose. And that makes so much sense, but still we are living in this delusion, I would say, where we're just thinking, okay, so my purpose has to be something I'm good at, not necessarily have fun with, but I'm just good at that because this is what I was studying or this is what I was previously doing. And I think it is something that we live in with this society, that we think that there's this one thing, our purpose is this one job.
Yeah.
Whereas our purpose might not have anything to do with our job, you know. There's a lot of people who do things in their free time that's their purpose, and it's not their job, but it's just bringing them joy. So I love how you just pointed that out. Our purpose is to live in a state of joy. So I would just ask you, based on this, that our purpose is our joy, do you think there are more things that make us joyful? Do you think there are more purposes in our life, or there's just this one that brings all the joy to us?
It's a really interesting question. I think there's multiple. Really think there's multiple purposes in our life. And you're right, everybody kind of focuses on, I must have one purpose. I must be doing one thing. That's the one thing I've been put on this earth to do. And that might be so, but that's incredible pressure for somebody. You know, I know I've worked with women who haven't even, all through their life, they've wanted to do something different. They've wanted to leave corporate. They've wanted to leave their executive jobs. They've wanted to set up a business. They've wanted to live a purposeful life, but they've put it off because they're so intimidated about trying to understand what their purpose is. And they see everybody around them who know what their purpose is. And they're like, well, I don't know what mine is. And I've got no idea. And then it becomes this real stressful situation, which you're not going to find your purpose when you're stressed, because your purpose is to find joy. So I like to look at it as, you know, if I use myself as an example, and then those of my clients as well, my purpose and what I teach my clients is, your purpose is to find joy. You can find joy through lots of different channels. You know, I like to use my joy, my sense of joy, my feeling, as a personal navigation system. So if I am in a certain situation, or if I'm presented with, I don't know, if I'm I get approached a lot to be interviewed. I get approached a lot to speak on stages. I get approached a lot to collaborate with other people, other businesses. And I just use that, my gut instinct, like my feminine intuition, that helps me define whether that is going to bring me joy or not. And if it doesn't bring me joy, I don't do it. I do not do it. I've even, I will only work with clients that bring me joy. I'm not going to work. If a client wants to pay me so much money to work with me, then that's absolutely fine. But if she is not going to bring me joy, I'm not going to bring her joy. So what's the point in us working together? Like, she'd be better off going and seeing somebody else and working with somebody else. So this is the ultimate thing, right? To find your purpose, joy. But then you can find it through doing lots of different things. My business brings me joy. You know, playing with my puppy brings me joy, and that's not a euphemism. I've actually got anyway. You know, hanging out with my friends, hanging out with my partner, all of that brings me joy. I've got multiple streams into my business. I coach. So I coach women to leave corporate and lead a more purposeful and free life. I speak on stages. You know, I work with people online. I work with people face to face. So I travel a lot. I help other women in their own business manage projects. So that's another stream into my business. All of them are bringing me joy. I can't say, well, actually, my purpose is to speak on stage. It's not to coach. My purpose is to speak on stage and to coach, because they're both bringing me joy. My purpose is also, you know, to get my nails done, because that brings me joy. My purpose is to walk in nature. That brings me joy. So I think, you know, as women, especially as women working in corporate or as an executive, we very, very often forget how wise we are and what powerful creators we are as women, and that we have a feminine intuition that steers us through life. And, you know, I find that certainly when I left corporate, I had so much male energy. It was ridiculous. And don't get me wrong, we should all have male energy. It's really, really good energy. It's the doing energy. But actually, you know, I help women reconnect with that feminine energy. And once you've reconnected with that really, you know, that's the receiving energy. That's the stillness. That's the asking, you know, that's the really lovely softness and the self-care and the self-love and everything that comes from that. Once you start to embrace that, and once you start to listen to your body and your heart and your gut, it's really easy to find your purpose, because it's just finding joy.
So many things that I could just go into. I totally agree with you that we have few things that we're gonna be excited and joyful about, and they will change throughout our life, because we change, the world changes, and so is our purpose gonna change. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it is kind of foolish to even just think about having that one thing and sticking with it throughout our life, even if it doesn't make us happy, like in 3 years' time, right? And I just wanted to add here some input that, you know, when I left my studies and didn't know what I'm actually gonna do, I didn't know, like, what is my purpose, I was really stressed out, because I was living with an idea that there is this one thing, and until I figure it out, I can't really live, right? And that really stopped me, like you said, for your clients, that stopped me dead in my tracks. I didn't even attempt to do anything, because I was just sitting and I was saying, okay, until I figure this out, like, I can't do anything, because it's gonna be a waste of my time, right? Whereas exactly sitting there and trying to figure it out in my head, that was actually a waste of the time. And I recall this video that I once saw where this woman explained how we are multi-potentialites as well, which means that looking back at Renaissance, people would do 10 different things. They didn't do just one thing. They were doing multiple things and just trying different areas to find, okay, what does in this area bring me joy, and in this area, and in this area. And there's nothing wrong to spread out until you just kind of stick with one or two, or just maybe change them. Finding purpose is as well as growing. You grow from one purpose and you grow into another, because you just change and develop and want to move on. And I really want to just, I think you said it like that it is kind of reconnecting with your intuition. And I feel as if I have struggled in the past with listening to my intuition, because I was very much in my mind trying to figure some things out and never really put an effort into trying to feel things out. If you can just explain, how does the process of going deep and finding that intuition, finding that answer within look like? Do you like have a routine where you just, I would wonder, like, if this something, someone asks you or something, okay, would you do this with me? And you say, okay, I'll think about it. I'll just take my time and I'll come back to you. What do you do in that time? How do you get in touch with your intuition?
So I think now it's something that comes really easy and naturally to me. And it's just a sense that I get. It's a sense. And I'm very good at saying no straight away. I am. I mean, sometimes, you know, I will have a little think about it, but I'm good. Like, it's just, it basically comes to me like a thunderbolt. I'm just talking about me personally. Mm-hmm. That's how I do it. How I actually got to that point is a different story, and how I teach my clients to get to that point is you know, there's lots of different paths that can lead you to there. But one of the biggest things that I would say, and one of the biggest things that I teach my clients, is to really stop being so busy. Right? So we're in this life, aren't we? And we've got so many things to do. We've got so many responsibilities, and I'm sure that we've all got big to-do lists that we tick off every day. We're used to living also in this very, very fast-paced environment. If we're working in corporate, if we're an executive, like, I can't speak for everybody, but certainly for me, I was a senior manager in corporate. I managed big teams, and I had a lot of projects on the go, right? So as well as the day-to-day business of managing a team and, you know, connecting with my colleagues and going into numerous meetings, there were also lots and lots of projects that had to be done, like yesterday. So I had a big tick list of things to do, and I used to do some myself. I used to delegate some out to my team. I used to pass some on to, you know, colleagues. But it was always busy. I never had time to think. I didn't even have time to have lunch. And I'm sure that some of your viewers will resonate with this, you know, if they're in that environment as well. And what I learned when I left corporate was just to slow down, to not be in that busy. And it's difficult because that is your go-to. Mm-hmm. You know, that's just your natural state. And when I was first introduced to this, like, just slow down, you know, have a morning practice, meditate, go and walk in nature, do yoga, you know, journal, like all these different practices. I was like, I cannot do this. I was so frustrated. I remember the first time I ever went in a flotation tank, you know, like when you go and float in water. And my partner bought it for me because I was so stressed out at work. And I went in it, and you literally lie. If you've never experienced it before, it's amazing. I definitely recommend that you do it. But you lie in a pool of salty water, so you're floating, and then you're in complete darkness. So you're like inside this egg, and the lid closes. And I couldn't cope with it. I was getting angry because I could not cope with the silence. I couldn't cope with just lying there and doing nothing. And now I love it. And I find that the more I take time for myself, the more that I take away from the busy, the more my business thrives, the more that I grow. Personally, I grow. And, you know, my business is only reliant on my personal growth. Mm-hmm. So I can only grow to a certain point, and my business can only grow to that point. I have to grow myself further, and my business grows with me, right? Mm-hmm. So that is so important, like looking after my own welfare.
Yeah.
And as part of that, then that's where the intuition comes, because if you've got so much going on, how on earth can you think? How on earth can you think, is this a good decision? Is that not a good decision? And I realized that that's why sometimes in corporate I used to have these heart-stopping moments where I'd think, oh, I've made such a big mistake. Like I remember so many times I was like, oh my goodness, I've made this mistake and it's horrendous. And it was because I never gave myself time to think. So do whatever makes you feel good in terms of like switching off from the busy, right? Because when you're busy, it's a fear of intimacy.
Yeah.
So busyness keeps you away from intimacy. It stops you from being intimate with yourself. And it also stops you from being intimate with other people. So there will be things that will be coming up that you just don't want to deal with. Maybe ghosts from the past, or, you know, feelings that you have that you're trying to suffocate. You just don't want to deal with them. So, okay, if I'm busy, I don't have time to deal with those. When you stop, sometimes it can be scary. It can be really scary, because then these things come up and you have to deal with it. But that is part of the journey. You know, that is like that's your purpose, that's your destiny, to grow as a person and to heal yourself. And then that intuition just comes naturally, because once you actually realize that you have this incredible power inside of yourself, then of course you're just going to practice and use it, so that in the end it really becomes second nature. All in the preparation.
So it is a habit, it is a skill that it is created. It's not just like, oh, I have it or I don't, you know, I know how to listen to my intuition or I don't.
We all of us have the intuition, but you're right, Mary, the habit is learning how to recognize it and use it, like use it for good. Use it very, very powerfully for good.
Yeah. What I heard is also developing intuition comes from developing like self-love as well, because taking that extra time in the morning, like half an hour for just yourself, that is a reflection of self-love, and that is something that develops your sense of intuition. Did you start learning that before you quit your corporate job or after?
Yeah, after. I didn't love myself when I worked in corporate. I really didn't. You know, I didn't particularly like the person that I'd become either. I turned into the person that they wanted to be. They wanted me to be. And then I felt that the more and more that I was working and within that role, the more I was morphing into that in my personal life, and I felt very, very unhappy. I felt very unaligned. I felt like I'd lost my identity. So I really didn't love myself, and I didn't practice self-care at all. So it was only really when I left corporate, and then I started to really, I was working with an amazing coach who really helped me transition. You know, it was almost like I was grieving my old identity, because that's who I'd been for the last 14 years. And then who am I? You know, who am I now? It was a really difficult period for me. It was like I felt very, very vulnerable and frightened. Very. So I needed somebody. That's why I love what I do, because I'm that somebody that helps women transition. I needed somebody. I don't know what I would have done actually if I hadn't have worked with somebody around that, because it's very, very easy to get back to your default position, isn't it? So my comfort zone was corporate. Even though I hated it, that was still my comfort zone. So it was about pushing myself out of that comfort zone. I'm really learning how to love myself. But that was also tough love as well. It wasn't just being about kind to myself. It was also about, you know, pulling myself up for things and really understanding, you know, why do I judge myself? Why do I judge others? You know, it was a whole process. And then really getting to that point through the act of self-care. You know, so all these wonderful things that we do, massages, bubble baths, whatever it is, you know, the nice stuff. Shows that we care for ourselves. So yeah, that was something that I would never, and you know what as well, Mary, I would have seen it as a weakness. Yeah I was actually interviewing somebody the other day, and it was really interesting what she came up with, and I completely agreed with her. Like, if somebody, when I was in corporate, or I was in my executive position, and if somebody came up to me and said, well, you know what, Abby, you know what I think you really should do, you should really sort of reignite your feminine wisdom and just be more feminine, and get this feminine energy in, and I'd be like, no, that's a bit weak. There's no way I would have done that in a million years, because I just couldn't operate like that within inside of that industry. It's like the doers, the movers, the male energy, male and female, are the ones that get to the top, not the women that are feminine and practice self-care and love themselves. That is a complete weakness. So I can't see that I would have done that anyway within that environment. And I think that structure is crumbling. As we move out of hierarchy, we go into more information sharing. We're out of the Piscean age now. We're now in the age of Aquarius. It's all about information sharing. It's all about femininity. It's all about feminine wisdom. It's matriarchal as opposed to patriarchal. We can see now it's all starting to crumble.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a different way of living anyway. So eventually we're not going to be in that situation anyway. But when all that crumbles, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be left that they're just flailing. They've got no idea how they're going to move from that real, that way of operating, that leadership that they've been taught, to actually embracing a different type of leadership that they will be able to take forward, into this new world, into this new energy, this new way of thinking. So it's like, we're here to help as many people as possible get over to the other side. It is a big shift, and I just think the sooner you can do it, the better.
I absolutely agree with that. Like, even in our day-to-day lives, we can see leadership roles changing, where there's more communication with their people who are working with them, and there's more empathy, there's just more soul in everything. I feel that the traditional corporate is it's time that it kind of moves out a bit, because what these relationships that are stepping forward are gonna be more meaningful, more soul-filled. I have a sense that because we are so in information age, where everything is online, everything is quick, everything feels like it's non-personal online, just everything is switching online where it's non-personal. I feel that people have this desire to create more personal relationships. We crave for that because that's what makes us human, actually. That's what makes relationships and businesses works. At the end of the day, it's the relationships with people you work with. And I have a sense that the boss in his office that never speaks to anyone, that's gonna kind of crash down, because we're gonna need people who will be understanding that people need connections more than ever before, because we don't just I have a sense that people stepping into their jobs now, they don't want to just have this as a job. We are getting to a point of awareness where we know that spending most of our time in a job, that doesn't, we have to enjoy it as well, or it just makes us miserable. We've seen it happen in the past with our parents, with our grandparents who were working in corporate life, and they were just kind of living just from day to day and not really having the fulfilling lives that they wanted. And I have a sense that we will want to create our time, whether it's in job or at home. We want to make that time count. We want to make that time mean something, that it's not just like, okay, let's just come here and just go from here in 8 hours and just pretend it's never happened and just have fun at home. I feel as if we want to contribute, and that we are more aware of look, if I'm spending majority of time of here, I want to have fun, at least.
But then the question is, how do you create that?
Mm. So
You know,
how do you think we could create that?
well, I think we create it for ourselves. So I think it paints a beautiful picture that corporate is suddenly going to be this wonderful, heart-centered, caring community where we can be ourselves and we can enjoy our jobs. But at the end of the day, it's still structured in hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's still like the old way of leadership. And yes, of course, things can change, but over a long period of time. So there's a whole movement of people now who are looking at a different way to do things, a different way to connect, a different way to do business. And they themselves are building, businesses, but that are run on a different way, in a different way, managed in a different way. They're led in a different way. And decisions are made in a different way as well. So, we are responsible for creating our own happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm saying is, if you are, because my message is not that corporate is bad.
Mm-hmm.
My message is not that working for somebody else is the wrong thing to do. Of course it's not. But if you are truly, truly happy working in your job, and your face lights up when you wake up in the morning and you're driving to work and the music's on, you're like, woohoo, I'm going to work, and it just feels so joyful, then that is amazing.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fantastic. And, well done. That sounds a little bit patronizing, but I'm just so happy that you're in a job where you feel like that. I mean, it really is such an amazing place to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't feel like that, then leave. And I know that it's easier said than done, because there needs to be a process. Of course, there needs to be a process and a plan and a strategy. But there are so many people out there that don't feel like that aren't working in corporations where they feel supported, that still have the boss, the boss is up there and we're down here and we don't speak to him. There's still that, and I know so many corporations that are trying to stop that. They're going to shared office space, and the boss no longer sits in his office with the door shut. He's out with the people, but there's still an awkwardness around it. It's not natural. Nobody's feeling natural about it. It's like something that's been forced on them by HR. So it's really sort of digging deep inside yourself and saying, okay, am I actually going to be doing this for the rest of my life? Because we have let's say 100 years on this life now. That is a tiny amount of time in comparison to how old this earth is, how old this universe is. I certainly don't want to be waking up every day like I did for 40 years and just dreading going into work and letting it affect me physically, mentally, affecting my soul. I want to do something that I feel passionate about. I have chosen to do this work. I've chosen to coach women, to help women, to speak on stages, to inspire them. My purpose is to find joy. They're the vehicles that I am using to help me find joy, and in turn help others find joy. It's your turn now to find your joy. If you're watching this and it's resonating with you, it's time for some tough love, because that's what self-love is about. It's about being real with yourself and about really understanding what it is that you want, instead of thinking, what is it that the world wants for me? No, what do you want? It's time to be really selfish about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-love is giving yourself also ability to grow and just step out of the comfort zone, even if that's hard. That's really hard. But if you love yourself enough to aim for joy and happiness, then you have to take those steps. You have to take those challenges. Some things at the beginning don't make sense. If there's a huge challenge that messes up your whole life, it doesn't make sense. But if you just have a sense that I have to go through this in order to get to somewhere, then just go for it, because when I look back also at my life, I see how there were situations and periods of time where I was thinking I'm losing everything, like depressed, losing relationships, money, all of those things. It was challenging, but I put myself through that because I knew that there's gonna be a few bumps on the road and that shouldn't stop me. And looking, like being in that situation, you can't really see why everything is just happening the way it is, even if it's going wrong. We can't see that, but looking back at it, it always makes sense. It always makes sense, like, okay, I had to go through that shit to get here, to win. So even just putting yourself out of the comfort zone, it is challenging, and it's not gonna be all rainbows and butterflies and, you know, switching from a job that doesn't fulfill you into creating something of your own. It's not easy. It's never easy, but it is worth it. And that's something that has to be instilled in our minds so that we manage to pull through it, because I see it always as like universe is gonna test you. How much do you really want it? Right? And it is the easiest thing to just drop out the comfort zone and say, okay, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna settle for this. Well, I've been settling for this and it's not too bad, but like I'm not happy, but it's not too bad, right? So what was the biggest challenge for you, switching from a corporate job that you didn't like into becoming a businesswoman, doing something that makes you freaking happy?
Yeah, my biggest challenge really was self-belief. It was self-esteem. It was believing that I could do it, and I really struggled with that for a long time. So, you know, I'd gone from a job where I was very confident and competent. I knew exactly what I was doing. So even though I was extremely unhappy, it's like you say, I could just sail along. I was in my comfort zone. You know, I was leading a mediocre life looking back now, but I was just getting on and doing it. So actually to leave that and then to start to do something where I was like, well, first of all, what do I do? How do I make money? What do I do? And then once I kind of figured out how to make money, I hadn't figured out my purpose. I just figured out how to make some money. Once I'd figured out how to make some money, I then had to really deal with all the limiting beliefs that came up about myself and my life and my abilities, especially because I was working with clients. So, you know, I had to overcome a lot of blocks, and I was totally self-sabotaging. So it took me a long time actually to get to where I was, and all the time I was like, what's wrong with me? You know, why can't I do it? You know, it was all like very victim-y. Oh, it's not fair. I just, you know, I want this so much and it's not coming to me. So a client said to me the other day, I want this so much, why am I not manifesting it? And I'm like, well, you could want something a lot, but actually you need to deal with all the internal voices, you know, your critical voice that is inside of you. And it might be a very small voice, but that is actually what's directing you. So I realized that I was self-sabotaging a lot. So yeah, it really was starting to feel very, you know, trying to feel confident about what I was doing. And I had this fantasy picture in my head that I'd have this thriving business and all these clients and it would all be wonderful. And, you know, I'd be earning this much money and, you know, I'd have this much time off and life would be great. But then in reality, it was a very different matter, because when it came to me having a discovery call with the option of maybe making an offer for that person to come and work with me, I was just freezing, and I was self-sabotaging, and I wasn't accepting that somebody would want to pay that much money to come and work with me. So that is a big thing to go through. So I mean, there's lots. I could be here for hours and tell you about all the things that were difficult to overcome, but I think that was the most difficult one to overcome, and I overcame it, and I overcame it by really rewriting the story. So really getting to the base, to the very roots of these limiting beliefs. Where do they come from? Why do I feel that? you know, and then dealing with those feelings, just going deeper and deeper and deeper, going with those feelings. And again, working with a coach, you know, I'm not only a coach, I also work with coaches that help me. So really working with a coach to work through that. Lots and lots of self-development work. So be prepared for that. It's going to show up every time that you grow.
Yeah.
Every time you stretch, it still shows up for me. I have not overcome this. So, you know, if we talk about how much I charge for my services, right? Because that is very, very much linked to self-esteem, self-worth. How much am I worth? Every time I go and raise my prices, I go through the same thing all over again. Every time. Well, I'm worth that much, but I'm not worth this much. Well, why are you not worth this much? Because I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. Well, why do you feel like that? And it just goes again. So this is just never ending. And that's why you see people that might leave corporate and get to a certain point and, you know, they'll start a business, but they'll just continue to charge low prices. You know, they won't grow their business. They won't grow as a person because they're not prepared to go to that next step, like that next step where you're actually, you know, this isn't about money. This is about feeling. This is about just this inner confidence and this self-belief, and you're helping other women to feel like that as well. So, you know, that's a whole other story, but it just continues. And I love it now because I'm like, uh-oh, here we go again. Let's do some personal development work on this particular subject. Or it might be something that it's never come up before. Oh, I didn't realize I was thinking that. So, you know, it's really good fun. But it is hard at times, very hard.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of growth in order just to have that growth process as a fun. I think when you reach the point where you're having fun with it, rather than just like beating yourself down for it, I think that's where things get really interesting and fun as well. So yeah, before we go to our last question, I would just like you to share where people can find you. Where can they get in touch with you? Where can they read your stuff and see your face and just communicate with you as well?
Okay, brilliant. So the best place to find me is on my website, abigailrebecca.com. So that's abigailrebecca.com. I hang out quite a lot on Facebook. So if you just search for Abigail Rebecca, I'll come straight up. And I do actually have a Facebook group called Big Change Small Steps. And I deliver free coaching in there every single week, free training. It's a wonderful community of, you know, potentially women that are going through the same thing as you. So it's really good to get that support and really, you know, get empowerment or self-empowerment from other women as well going through the same thing. And I'd really love to offer a free gift as well, if that's okay. So if anything has resonated with you and you really want to sort of understand, like if you're like thinking, okay, I want to do it, but I just don't know how to do it, then if you go to abigailrebecca.com/roadmap, so that's abigailrebecca.com/roadmap. You will be able to download my Big Change Small Steps roadmap. And within there are the first 5 steps that I would say that you need to take to start you on your journey. And this is the first 5 things that I always share with my clients when they come and work with me privately or in groups.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think everyone who's gonna watch this will have a link below this video and can get their free gift. I really appreciate you even offering that. I think it's a great I'll check it out myself. I haven't checked it out yet. So that's something I'll jump on. Yeah, and the final question would be something that I always ask that just, I don't know, I just find it a fun question, a big but fun question. So in this moment of your life where you are, what do you know it's an absolute truth for you?
Oh, what is an absolute truth for me? An absolute truth for me, Mary, is that we are meant to be living a fully abundant life. We are meant to be living a life that is joyful, where we're happy, we're content, we have an abundance of everything, like love, relationships, friendship, experiences, money, everything. And I truly believe that. And I believe that my absolute truth is that I'm worthy of that.
Amazing. Thank you. And that's it for our conversation. I appreciate you being here, taking your time, just sharing all the wisdom that you have learned and just giving us an opportunity to learn from you. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you as well, Mary. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So that's it, people. If you like these kind of videos, subscribe to get notifications whenever one of these pops up, and just get all the golden nuggets from these calls. And that's it. I will see you next video. Thanks, Abby. Bye.
Bye.